Welcome to another episode of the Pixelated Sausage Show. Hi. How are y'all doing? I'm, of course, your host. But before I say all that, of course, I hope y'all are doing well. But I am, of course, not a horse, but a human being who calls himself Mark Kushnez. Hi. On today's podcast, I'll be talking about NeoSprint, Wild Seas, Sokomage, Lesson Learned Cult of the Elizabeth, which is just a demo prologue of the main game, Go Jump, and Ruinarch. But before I get to all that, this past week has been kind of a stressful, blurry mess because in deciding to make the last episode of the System Shock Attack the Backlog sub-series, I ended up having to play that game a lot longer than I was expecting. I thought maybe at max it would be an additional 8 hours to finish the game. And in reality, it ended up being between 12 and 13 hours. So getting that playtime in during the week and then recording the episode and then editing the episode was a bit of crunch. No Captain in sight. Speaking of Captain Crunch, that was one of my favorite cereals, but probably the most dangerous cereal. I'm trying to think if there was any cereal that was more prone to stabbing you as much as Captain Crunch. Loved Captain Crunch. I'm a big fan of cold cereal. I haven't had it in years. It has maybe been over a decade since I've had cold cereal. But I'm trying to think if there was any cold cereal that I did not like. I guess Cocoa Pebbles. I never really liked either Cocoa or Fruity Pebbles. Is it Fruity Pebbles or it's not Fruit Pebbles? That doesn't sound right. And I think what I didn't like about those was they're Rice Krispie adjacent, but they're smaller and flat, correct? I would need an expert on Pebbles to speak to that. But Rice Krispies are about the size limit for me. That's about as small as I can go. And to my knowledge, to my recollection, Pebbles are smaller. They have a smaller footprint at the very least. They might be larger in diameter or some shit, but they're flat again. Maybe not. What the hell was I talking about? Captain Crunch, Captain, no, Crunch, System Shock. Like that game a lot. Has its issues. But I'm glad to move on just because I'm still trying to work out how Attack the Backlog works in that how long do people really want to see one game go? But it's going to be long in some cases. If I go and play an Assassin's Creed game, that's going to be a series or a sub-series, a season. I don't know how I want to word these individual arcs. An arc, maybe? It's going to be one that lasts many episodes, potentially in the double digits. Because I'm not going to mainline any game ever again just to get through it so that I can meet a deadline. Given the structure of Attack the Backlog now and how it is more of a game club type of format, I'm able to play games the way I want to play them and take my time, which is how I played System Shock. It took me 28 hours to beat that game, which is on the longer side. But I ate it up. I love that. whole time. Again, I have issues. A lot of them are related to it, specifically the console version, and it feeling like a PC game clearly that has been ported to consoles, but not so much built with consoles in mind. I think it could have used a bit more optimization in that sense, but overall, it worked pretty well with a gamepad. On the movie side, I decided to rewatch the Ocean's movies because I enjoyed the first enough. And then I don't remember enjoying... I didn't remember the 13th at all, really. And then the 12th, the last few times I tried to watch it, I never ended up finishing it. But I thought to myself about those previous attempts and how I probably did myself a disservice by starting 12 immediately, and I mean immediately after watching 11. And that's just too much Ocean for anyone in one sitting. They need to be broken up, so I split them over multiple days, and I enjoyed 12 a lot more. I didn't rewatch 11 because I've seen that enough times. I know I like that. I don't love it the way some people do. I think there are quite a few people who put it at the top tier of heist movies, who would give it a 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, and it's not there for me. It's more in the 7 to 8 range, probably closer to a 7. Let's just say it's a 7.5. Even though 1 out of 10 is already granular enough for me, I don't want to get into 0.5s, and then we start getting into fucking, well, why don't we just use a 100-point scale? Just leave it the 10-point scale. So, I guess I would give the first Ocean's an 8. It's a cautious 8. Let me think about it some more. 8. But in rewatching 12, I liked it a lot. I don't have a problem with the Julia Roberts part of the story. I don't think it's kind of nice in a really, really stupid way. The movies just get dumber and dumber. But I really liked 12. It had a lot of the same charm. I can't remember what the most popular and common criticisms of it are. If people just say it's the same movie. I think there's stupidity in the plot, and I don't... Is Andy Garcia's character supposed to be incredibly intimidating and scary? Because he can't go to the cops and say, does he have proof that they took his money? So how can he make them pay him back with interest? The threat of death? That's one of the things that doesn't work for me in the movie. I don't get a great sense of intimidation from him. I don't find him scary. If he came to me, just because he found you, they didn't seem like they were really trying to hide themselves. I don't even know if any of them changed their name outside of Ocean, who went by Miguel or something. So I don't... That part of the whole story, which is a big plot point, doesn't really work for me. If he came to me and said, you need to pay me this by this date or whatever, I'd be like, fuck you, dude. What are you gonna do about it? Huh? Try it. People like me. People don't like you. So, ignoring that, it's a very fun movie. And Rusty is the heart of the series. Then with 13, it's still okay because you have your cast and you have some really great moments, but you lose the woman's touch. No Julia Roberts, no Catherine Zeta-Jones. It would have been really nice if in 12, at the end, the reveal had her father be Sean Connery, to do a little throwback to Entrapment as opposed to Albert Finney, who I really like Albert Finney, but it was just, he didn't have any presence in that movie. So it just felt like clearly this is a cameo and having some kind of big name would be nice. Albert Finney, big name, maybe. I like him. I like quite a few of his movies. I don't really think he's a big name. I can't think of any. Trying to think of what his biggest movie would have been. He did, I don't know if he did multiple or just the one Hercule Poirot movie. He did Murder on the Orient Express. I don't know if that was a TV one or not. He was in an adaptation of A Christmas Carol. He was the father in Big Fish, which might be what a lot of people know him for. I really liked Two for the Road with him and Audrey Hepburn. But Sean Connery would have been a really nice reveal. But then with 13, it should have been better than it was. You have Al Pacino as your antagonist, and he's okay. He's not. I don't know. There's something about it that. Why is it? I swear to God, I need to cut this fucking mustache off or something, because it just is driving me up the freaking wall. And it seems to only happen when I record now. I don't understand what the hell's going on with this stupid thing. It's really pissing me off. But Pacino just didn't do much for me. And then a lot of 13 feels like we have some really good ideas, but we won't follow through with any of them. Bringing back Andy Garcia again, but they have to work together. And clearly Garcia has another thing in mind, to not exactly backstab them, but to undermine their operation a bit. I think there's a lot of fun they could have had with that, but they don't do much with it. Garcia pops in, then he disappears, and you have the antagonist from 12 back, and there's a little fun with that, but a lot of it just feels like we have some ideas here and there, but we're not going to follow through with any of them. And some of the characters, some of the cast, the main crew, they're there, but they're really not. So, and I guess we have with 11, it's Ocean and Julia Roberts. And then in 12, it's Rusty and Catherine Zeta-Jones. And then for 13, it's Matt Damon and the one lady, and it seems like it goes from Ocean's movie to Rusty's movie to Matt Damon's movie, and Matt Damon's character is a fun character for all the other characters to make fun of, but to focus on him, I don't really like his character. I enjoy watching the other characters make fun of him because he's the one with a stick up his ass. And I don't like his disguise in the movie. He looks so gross. It's not even the nose or anything like that. It's just the complexion of his skin. He looks disgusting. But it was okay. It was okay. It has its moments, but it's kind of long and boring and just a little bit dull, sadly. But it's okay. The thing about it though is that I do think it's missing Roberts and even Jones. I don't like Jones particularly, but I wouldn't mind her returning. But I don't know where I was going with that. Yeah, no. The thing about 13 that's weird is that you have the cast there, I don't think anyone is missing. Again, it's a stupid plot. The whole setup for it is really dumb, with Elliot Gould's character getting screwed over by Pacino, and in order to give him the will to live again, they won't. The team wants to fuck Pacino over. But the weird thing about the movie is that you have the cast there, and yet, other than Damon, it feels like, even though there's plenty of screen time for a good chunk of them, I don't feel like I get anything from any of them. It oddly feels like everyone is ignored, even though there are plenty who still have a lot of time. It's a weird, I don't know what to think of 13, but I watched it, and that's enough of that. Let's get on to what I've been playing, because I don't have that much to say about a lot of these games. So let us do that. And let us figure out this mustache situation. For frick's sake. Because I don't want to shave it. I feel like it's such a part of me at this point. I've never been fully clean shaven in a long time. Or I've not been fully clean shaven in a very long time. And I don't like the idea of it. The first game is NeoSprint, which is another Atari reimagining, revitalization of a classic series, the Sprint series, that I am unfamiliar with. I think the first game was Super Sprint, and then there was a Sprint 2. But this is a retro racer in the vein of those classic games, if you remember them, or Super Off-Road, if that's a better game to think back on, which had its console versions, but I think of it as that arcade cabinet, a standing arcade cabinet with the 4 or 3 steering wheels. And it's one of those racing games where you can see the entire course from a very pulled back camera, over the top camera, slightly isometric. And you're driving around in that sense. It's similar to also Micro Machines and games of that ilk, but not fully over the top. Again, a bit of an angle, so isometric. And it's all right. The thing about it that I really like is, in a lot of these games, it can be a bit tricky to control the vehicles. The controls in this are very tight, very responsive. It feels very, very good. It might be one of the best feeling racers of this kind that I've played in a while, if not ever. The bad thing, though, is that it's incredibly easy. There are 3 different campaigns that you play solo, and I went through the first one that was 4 different cups or whatever, each ending with a boss fight, which is just a one-on-one race with the leader of that particular cup, who in defeating will give you some unlockables. There's a lot to unlock, various skins for cars and stuff of that nature, and things for a level editor, which is nice. But it's incredibly easy. I never had any difficulty winning any race in the first cup, in the first campaign, or in the second one that I played a bit of. I thought maybe it'd get progressively harder. I didn't see any option for difficulty. It's not like your kart races where you have the different CCs and stuff like that. So, as much as I enjoyed playing it, the lack of challenge made it grow stale for me over time. There is multiplayer, but no online multiplayer. So, the legs of it is something I'm unsure of. There is a level editor, which is pretty easy to use. It's a little expectedly clunky using a gamepad, as opposed to if you're on PC using mouse and keyboard, where it'd be a lot easier and faster to put pieces exactly where you want. It can be tricky at times where you want to put an object in a specific space, but you keep going everywhere around it. It can be a little funky that way, but it's pretty simple and straightforward to use, and doesn't take a lot of time to put a track together, which is nice. And the ability to download other people's created courses gives the game some legs, so that you can always be finding new courses that way. But since you can't take those and play online, it's a very locally centric game. So if you have people to play with locally, that is where I think you can maybe have the most fun, because in that sense, then you'd be on a similar playing level with whoever you're playing with, as opposed to the AI that just seems to be kind of weak. Maybe it gets more challenging in that final campaign. But that is the Achilles heel of the game for me. Probably both the lack of online multiplayer and then the lack of challenge from the AI makes it so that as much as I enjoyed playing it, I can't see myself playing it for much longer, because it just wasn't challenging. So I would get ahead of these opponents fairly quickly, and then I would just be in the lead the entire time. They never pose a challenge. So your mileage may vary. That is NeoSprint. Wild Seas is a tower defense game that feels like it's trying to be or try to say, what if survivors like Vampire Survivors and games of that nature, what if instead of having you just move around the area auto firing, what if we took that idea and tried to make a tower defense game out of it? And it's okay. You start off each level by going around the environment, smashing the hell out of boxes, opening chests to get coins so that you can purchase turrets to place in the small open area. And then with each round, each phase, when the enemy attacks, you watch the turrets do their thing and can attack enemies yourself. You play as a dinosaur with a giant club, but you're pretty weak. If you get too close to enemies, they can do significant damage to you fairly quickly. You don't do a great amount of damage, so it's kind of pointless for you to attack enemies yourself. It only makes sense to venture out to open chests that will sometimes drop from enemies, because those can include a wrench that will allow you to upgrade your turrets. But it becomes a standard tower defense game of place your towers, have the attack phase, and then when the attack phase is over, you have your build phase, and so on and so forth. The weakness of your character is a frustrating element. You seem kind of pointless, and it makes sense to just stay back during the attack phase because you can't do much. You can ricochet bullets that are being fired at you, but you don't ricochet them back at the enemy that fired at you. You just ricochet them in any direction. And trying to time it is worthless. So you just mash the attack button and hope you end up ricocheting some or all bullets that come your way. It has a really, really great look to it. I love it. It's super bright and colorful. And the style, the aesthetic, I'm a big, big fan of. But playing it was not a lot of fun. The turrets you have at your disposal are pretty standard stuff. You have one that fires very rapidly but not accurately, a machine gun that fires in bursts, a sniper tower, a bomb one, a healing tower, and then a one-shot, one-kill, super-powered one. And it's fine. It's fine. But didn't really love it all that much. Sokomage, on the other hand, this is a great puzzle game. I really like Sokomage games, which are those sliding puzzle games where you move an object around an environment and try to get into a specific space by sliding around the environment. And what I love about Sokomage is that it's challenging right from the start and just gets progressively more challenging, more complicated. But there's a lot of creativity in the level design. So you're a mage and you are trying to slide these big blocks of ice into these open spaces so that it can reach this crystal at the end of the level, activate it, whatever, and finish the level, move on to the next one. But one of the things you have to do in order to get these blocks into these spaces is destroy certain bushes so that you can push the block on them and use them strategically to not manipulate the environment, but to figure out exactly how to get these giant ice blocks into the spaces. So you have to destroy the right ones and then push your ice blocks onto other ones and create a pathway to each of these open spaces. And sometimes you will use other ice blocks to block out certain areas. It's very creative in its puzzles and has that thing that I think all puzzle games, good puzzle games need, which are those aha moments where you're looking at a puzzle, you start a new level, you're not quite sure how to complete it, and then as you're slowly inching your way towards the solution, getting a little bit further, then maybe failing and having to start over, you have all those little aha moments. Oh, now I see what I have to do, and that's satisfying. That's always a good time. So I would recommend checking out Sokomage if you're a fan of Sokoban puzzles, or if you're just a fan of puzzle games. Small little game, worth checking out. Then Lesson Learned and Lesson Learned Cult of the Elizabeth, which again, the latter is the demo prologue, is a tower defense game that is Don't Starve, but if Don't Starve was just a tower defense game. It has that similar aesthetic, very sketchy, kind of prepubescent boys sketchbook that looks charming from Don't Starve, but here it's a bit ugly. I don't like the character designs. There seems to be significant artificial sharpening going on. It looks very unpleasant to the eyes. And I think it's because there's sharpening happening just in the game itself, not on my display, because I have sharpening down to 0 on all my displays. It's the first thing I turn off. I don't know if I'd rather have motion smoothing. Sharpening is just really bad. So there's something weird about it visually there. But the way the game works is that you have this, not tower, this giant walking machine that you have to protect, and it's following along this path. And during the build phase, you are going around the environment collecting resources. So you'll be chopping down trees, mining, or pickaxing stone, and collecting these resources, taking them to your machine in order to then build towers from the collected resources. You have a minion at your disposal, a fellow person who you can set off on tasks to collect this resource or that resource, and eventually they'll build towers for you or repair towers, which is nice to have that additional partner to collect resources. But the actual gameplay, where you have your build phase, your collecting resources phase, and then you place your towers, and then enemies come at you, and you can attack the enemies with a slingshot that just stuns them, so they'll stop in place for a second or two, allowing them to take additional damage without moving towards the machine you're trying to protect. It's not fun, and I don't know how much of that is because I find it so ugly, but it's also on the middle difficulty. Especially in the demo prologue, it can get challenging very quickly, surprisingly quickly. And your limited tower collection, it's not satisfying. But the real knock against it is just how ugly it is. It is so unpleasant to look at. And there's just not that much to it. After that initial resource gathering phase, the phases between attack and resource gathering are very quick. You don't have a lot of time to collect additional resources in between attack phases after that initial attack phase. There's something in my room that is just making noise like crazy. I know it's not coming through the mic, but I can hear it, and it's driving me crazy. What is it? What is going nuts? But as someone who really loves tower defense games, I didn't find a lot of strategy here in what towers to use and where to place them. The enemies themselves, they don't need to follow the path. Only the machine has to stay on the path and goes towards the end of it. So you have your basic, just a bunch of attack phases and then boss phase, and didn't do much for me. And Go Jump is a game where it's a single screen. Each level is a single screen. It's kind of not format structured like a Mega Man game where you have a handful of bosses, or Cuphead, where you have a handful of bosses and they have a star rating to show their difficulty. And the way levels work is that you're this, I don't know if you're a dog or something, some kind of dog-like creature, or a dog. And there will be aspects of the level where either one enemy is attacking you from one side, or you're in between two enemies attacking each other, or stuff like that. And you have to jump at the right time to avoid taking damage from maybe a tank shooting at you, or some lightning coming down in the sky, or someone throwing blades at you, and so on. Or in some cases, maybe an object will come that you can stand behind to get cover from an attack that will do damage to all of the screen except anything behind that particular object. So it's a timing-based game where you're just, for the most part, jumping to avoid damage. And if you take damage, it's a one-hit, one-kill thing that you have to restart the entire level, or each level has certain checkpoints, maybe 3 or 4 checkpoints before completing it. And I found it very, very annoying. It's a very loud and obnoxious game with a sense of humor that probably will work for younger folk, but as someone who is old, I found it very grating very quickly. It looks great. I think it looks quite good, but I did not like any of the story and you can't skip story elements, I don't think. So you just have to sit there and bear this obnoxious, loud shit. The gameplay became very frustrating, and I think a part of that is because of the loud, obnoxious nature of it. Because you even hear that, just even in characters speaking, I'm just like, oh god, what is this? I don't like this. But it becomes a game of memorization, essentially, in between checkpointed areas. So you might get only so far your first time through, then you die, but you remember the pattern, so you say, okay, I need to jump here, and then there's going to be pause here, or these characters are going to throw grenades and I have to avoid them. Then after that, there's going to be another 2 jumps, and then stand behind this, then jump, then stand behind this, then jump. So it just becomes a game of memorization, basically. And if that's something that appeals to you, check out the game. But if you're not someone who enjoys that kind of memorization, failure, gameplay loop, just move on. But that is Go Jump. And then last we have Ruinarch, which is a game I barely played because it just seems like a broken, incomplete mess of a game, especially on console, where it's clearly a PC game made for mouse and keyboard that has been altered very little to work on console. It's been not optimized really at all. The tutorial is the equivalent of a teacher asking a question and then telling you to find the answer in a textbook, but not really teaching you organically, not fluidly along the way. It's just, okay, if here's a question, go into the textbook and look. All right, here's another question. The tutorial works in that a little box will come up when you're playing the game, and then you click the little text box and it will explain one mechanic. It'll say, hey, this button does this. All right, good. You can do that in the game now. But it doesn't really teach you about what you're doing in the game and how to go about doing it. It's very clunky. Sometimes text boxes will just not activate when I click on them until I've done it 2 or 3 times. It's not very pleasant to look at. What I think the game is supposed to be is you are an evil overlord and you're trying to kill the humans of this environment by setting up traps or setting up minions. I don't know, because the game did a really poor job of onboarding me in any way. And when I looked at the Steam page for it, apparently the developers just abandoned the game based off a lot of negative reviews. It has mixed reviews overall, which is never the greatest sign. So that's what that is. I'm tired. I'm so tired. System Shock destroyed me. It's too much. But that'll do it for this tired episode of the Pixelated Sausage Show. I hope it was good enough for you. I promise next week will be better. But that is it. That is all. As always. Not as always. Or, I mean, technically as all. I am, again, your host, Mark Kuznez. Y'all can find me pretty much everywhere at PX Sausage. If you enjoyed this here show or any of the stuff I do and what have you, you can go over to patreon.com/PXS to support me and my nonsense that away. Depending on the tier, you may get access, or you can get access to a monthly Q&A, some fancy Discord roles, a private channel for the cool kids called the Cool Kids Club, some random drops, and more. But I'll leave that to you to discover by just going to the Patreon. Again, patreon.com/pxs, if that is something you would like to look into. But in addition to the Patreon, you can find links to the site, the YouTube, the Discord, and so much more over at pxsausage.com. But that is it. That is all. As always, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed this here episode, and I hope you have both a wonderful rest of your day, a lovely rest of your week, and a wonderful weekend. But for now, adios, arrivederci. Bye bye.
It's go time. Go, Daddy. It's go time. Go.